Why do we believe politically correct statements? To explore the morality of believing politically correct statements, we must distinguish between the act of speaking and the state of believing. While the former is often a social tactic, the latter is a complex ethical landscape involving the duty to truth versus the duty to avoid harm. Consider a doctor who begins using person-first language, example, person with schizophrenia instead of schizophrenic, after a hospital mandate. Initially, she does it to avoid professional friction. Eventually, she believes this shift is morally superior because it helps her see the patient's humanity before their pathology. 1. The deontological view, truth versus compassion. In deontology or duty-based ethics, the morality of a belief is often judged by its adherence to a universal principle, the duty to truth. Critics of politically correct culture, often citing Immanuel Kant, argue that we have a moral obligation to be as precise and truthful as possible. If a politically correct statement is seen as a euphemism that obscures reality, example, justice-involved individual instead of convicted felon, believing it could be seen as a violation of our intellectual integrity. The duty to dignity. Conversely, proponents argue that our primary moral duty is to respect the inherent dignity of others. If traditional language carries historical baggage that dehumanizes a group, then shifting one's belief to a more inclusive framework is a fulfillment of the categorical imperative, treating others as ends in themselves rather than as labels. Utilitarianism, minimizing social friction. Utilitarianism judges the morality of an action and, by extension, the beliefs that drive those actions by its consequences. Reduction of harm. From this perspective, believing politically correct statements is moral because it reduces micro-harm. If using inclusive language prevents a marginalized individual from feeling excluded or insulted, the total utility of the interaction increases. The cost of pluralistic ignorance. A utilitarian drawback occurs when people believe things only because they think everyone else does. This can lead to a spiral of silence, where the truth is suppressed to maintain social harmony, potentially leading to bad public policy because honest data is never discussed. Virtue ethics, the character of the believer. Aristotelian virtue ethics asks, what kind of person does this belief make me? The virtue of empathy. Believing in the necessity of politically correct statements can be a practice of empathy. It requires the believer to step outside their own experience and acknowledge how words affect others. The vice of intellectual dishonesty. On the other hand, if a person adopts these beliefs solely out of fear of social cancellation, they may be cultivating the vice of cowardice or performative virtue, hypocrisy. A truly virtuous believer would adopt the language because they genuinely value the personhood of others, not because they fear the mob. The ethics of linguistic engineering. The morality of these beliefs is also tied to how they are formed. If a belief is engineered through institutional pressure rather than organic conviction, does it lose its moral value? Internalization versus compliance. Ethical philosophers distinguish between compliance, doing it because you have to, and internalization, doing it because you believe it's right. A belief formed through genuine reflection is typically viewed as more moral than one adopted through social coercion. In conclusion, the belief in politically correct statements is rarely just a matter of falling for a trend. It is a sophisticated psychological and ethical process that bridges our biological need for social safety, our cognitive drive for internal consistency, and our moral aspiration for human decency. The synthesis of belief. Whether we are looking through the lens of evolutionary biology or modern moral philosophy, several key truths emerge. Belief as a social glue. We often adopt the language of our tribe because the cost of social isolation is higher than the cost of intellectual dissent. The feedback loop. Public compliance, saying the right thing, eventually leads to internal belief through cognitive dissonance. We convince ourselves we were always right to avoid the pain of feeling like a hypocrite. Linguistic shaping. By changing the names of things, we change the furniture of our minds. When we use words that emphasize dignity, we find it easier to believe in that dignity. The ethical middle ground. The morality of these beliefs lies in the tension between the duty to truth, precision, and the duty to compassion, harm reduction. A virtuous believer is one who adopts this language not out of fear, but out of a genuine desire to see the humanity in others. Ultimately, believing in politically correct statements is a testament to the human capacity for adaptation. It shows that our minds are not fixed, but are constantly being reshaped by the cultural and moral currents of our time.